Okay, I told you yesterday, and now you've stolen my thunder. You've already told now your story of your interaction with all these famous people. The guy who forged Andy Warhol's autograph and a guy who got his picture on the front page of the Pompano Beach Guardian or whatever. I told you yesterday. I said I've told you about the story of the 6 degrees of separation. There was an old game. Do the kids still do that kind of thing, or was that a '90s thing?
No, that was a thing, and then it was, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Any movie star could be traced back to Kevin Bacon.
Well, I have some 6 degrees of separations that don't involve any bacon or sausage or any other pork products. But I told you that I feel like I'm playing Name That Tune now. I can separate myself in 3 degrees from Robert Blake. And you said, what? And you had never heard that. Have I not told this story?
I don't remember this story. Was this during that period of time where you were murdering people's ex-wives or whatever was going on with Robert Blake?
No, what?
Whatever,
No,
Robert Blake. Didn't he murder his ex-wife or hire someone to murder his ex-wife?
Yes, you mean to tell me that you are not completely versed in the entire saga of Robert Blake and the murder of his wife and the whole 9 yards and his fame and infamy and everything else?
I am familiar with a lot of it. He had a reputation for being a complete dick. The cast of Saturday Night Live said that when he hosted the show in like 82 or 83, whatever it was, he was like the biggest asshole. But I never bought him as a tough guy. He just looked like a little, I don't know, he just was like a little stout guy. I never bought him as being Mr. Street.
But that's the thing of it is, I think it was a Napoleon complex, the little man type of thing. But for those uninitiated, because if Brian's not up on this, Robert Blake was a child star, a child actor, maybe not necessarily a big star. Back
he was a rascal. He was one of the rascals.
In the late 30s, early 40s, he was a little Mickey Gubatosi. He was Our Gang or Little Rascals, one of the iterations of those things. And then as he grew to adulthood, he had a dry spell there for a while, but then he got the part in Cold Blood, the movie adaptation of the Truman Capote book about the Clutter family being murdered, slaughtered in their home in Kansas. And it was a major motion picture. And everybody, oh, he's the next James Dean. He's the greatest actor of our generation, right? And then makes a few movies. Okay, but then he gets the Beretta TV series. And he's one of the biggest stars. He's a private investigator, Beretta. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. Don't do it. The theme song was all over the fucking place. And the best, I watched Beretta when I was a kid. It was what, 73, 74, 75, 76. But the best part was him going on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And they booked him because he was, as they say, he was a different kind of cat. You didn't know what he was going to fucking say. You didn't know whether he was going to say something off color, or you didn't know he was going to say something hilarious, or you didn't know he was going to go on some diatribe telling these stories about when he was a child actor and all of the world is on him. And you could tell he had psychological things going on, but it made for entertaining late night conversation on television. So then nobody hears much of Robert Blake for a while. And then maybe you can Google and find the year. But then in the early 90s, his wife gets murdered in their car. They had been to a restaurant out in Los Angeles, and then they went back to their car. And then his story was, he said, "Oh, I forgot my gun in the booth in the restaurant. I need to go back to the restaurant and get my gun." And then he goes back to the restaurant, starts telling him, "I lost my gun. I left my gun here. There's my gun." Meanwhile, his wife is sitting in the car way down the lonely street from the restaurant, and she gets shot and killed, right? That's the story. And they arrested him, and there was a big trial. And come to find out,
for a little man, 5'4",
a big trial for a little man. But his wife was named Bonnie Lee Bakley. And she also, there's been documentaries on this. I saw one several years ago, and even some of the details escaped me, but she had been also involved with Christian Brando, the son of Marlon Brando. And
he was involved in a lot of stuff.
he was involved in a lot of stuff. Google him, kids. How did he kill himself? Wink, wink. Or did he actually get shot by somebody? How did he die?
No, he, I believe, killed his sister's lover, and then his sister killed herself. And the rumor is that he's the father of one of Michael Jackson's children. I believe the youngest of the children, that it was his DNA actually used, or his sperm, or whatever the fuck. But
But
yeah.
if
He was Michael Jackson's bodyguard for years.
If you dig into that, you find out that Christian Brando and Robert Blake both thought at one time that they were the father of Bonnie Lee Bakley's baby. Say that a number of times quick. And I don't even know what their marital status was at the time that she was murdered. He didn't like her at all, Robert Blake, and he had, I think, moved her into a house on the back of his property, but he loved the kid that he thought was his, but Christian Brando had thought it was his, and there was a whole big drama over that. And anyway, so he was arrested, and he was tried on this thing, and goddamn now, how did he get off? I'm trying to remember.
With a sock.
Oh, come on.
Dirty little man.
But the point is, this was, I think, maybe right before the O.J. Simpson thing. It didn't.
No, it was after.
It was after. Okay. It was right after. It didn't get as much coverage.
2001 was when she was murdered. He was arrested in 2002. He was acquitted in 2005.
Okay.
Then there were civil cases. Her 3 children filed a civil case. And in 2005, a jury found Blake liable for wrongful death and ordered him to pay $30 million. And then he filed for bankruptcy.
And then he's never paid a thing. And boy, now he looks like he's got to be 80 years old now or whatever.
He's dead now.
Oh, is he dead? He died a few years ago, didn't he?
He died, yes, March 9th, 2023 at the age of 89.
Okay, yeah, the gray hair had taken over and he was shriveled up and everything. But the point is the 3 degrees of separation. Bonnie Lee Bakley, they come to find out when they do all these investigations over her murder, was running some kind of several enterprises, including she had a Lonely Hearts thing going on where she would correspond with men looking for companionship, and then somehow she'd either move in with them or avail herself of some of their money. And that was that's how she got pregnant and, was milking Brando and Blake. And also she was doing a candid photography business. 'Cause back before the internet, and, if you were collecting pornography of the homemade sort rather than the professionally produced stuff, you had post office boxes, you had people putting ads, and they would trade things back and forth and sell, like, here's $15 for a portfolio of 5 candid photos. Or if you're pen pals with someone, then you would say, well, I want a picture of you, Brian, riding a lawnmower, and I'll send you a picture of me dribbling a basketball. Or whatever. Well, I knew a young lady who was an avid collector and aficionado of the, home exchange porn industry.
The home exchange porn industry.
Well, now it's a big deal. The amateurs, the pornography featuring amateurs, they're all professional. They're getting paid. They're doing this as a business. It was like the underground tape traders of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, but for porn.
Only back then, everyone was hairy.
Yes, either Harry or John Smith or some other kind of alias. But anyway, so when Bonnie Lee Bakley's photo was on the news as having been murdered, as I mentioned, this young lady that I knew that collected the amateur porn, I got pictures of her. She had actually ended up with pictures of Bonnie Lee Bakley and all of her various poses that she had been sending out before she hooked up into the let's have a kid by a movie star and milk that fucking racket. So I know a person who has pictures of the person that Robert Blake murdered in delicate poses.
Wow, Bonnie Lee Blake. Wow, she was from over here, Morristown, New Jersey. Who knew? She was 44 when she was murdered. She was married 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times.
There you go.
44 years old, married 10 times. That's that's fucking crazy.
Does it mention her home enterprises?
Let's see. Bakley began a mail order business sending nude pictures of women, including herself, to men. She also ran Lonely Hearts ads in magazines and advertising. In magazines advertising for a male companion. After communicating with men who answered the ad, she would ask for money for rent or travel. She's like the GWF investor. Bakley's business and scams eventually afforded her enough money to buy several houses in Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh!
And one outside of Los Angeles. She pursued a Hollywood career as a singer and actor under the name Lee Bonnie, but was unsuccessful.
My Bonnie lies over the ocean. My Bonnie lies out in the street. My Bonnie got me in trouble because I shot her after we had something to eat.
In 1989, she was arrested in Memphis for drug possession and fined $300. In 1995, she was arrested for attempting to pass 2 bad checks from an account of a Memphis record company. So she was apparently tearing things up in the USWA territory in the late 80s and early 90s. She would have been good on TV as a valet. She would do anything, it seems like. Jesus.
Yeah, and then she could get married in the ring.
In 1990, Bakley began pursuing singer Jerry Lee Lewis.
Oh!
Bakley eventually did meet Lewis and eventually became close friends with his sister, Linda Gale. Can you imagine not marrying Jerry Lee Lewis and be like, well, I really saved myself there. That guy has guns and he's crazy and he's shooting at people and he's been accused of all sorts of shit.
But at least I'm friends with his sister.
I'll take this little guy over here, Robert Blake. She went after Dean Martin, Frankie Valli, and Gary Busey. She ended up with Christian Brando and then Robert Blake. But that's like aiming for A and getting D. I want Dean Martin and Frankie Valli. All right, you're going to date Marlon Brando's kid and Robert Blake, who's like 60.
But once it's failed with Gary Busey, isn't anything a step up?
That must be intense. Must be an intense relationship with Gary Busey. But this was 6 degrees of Jim Cornette. Well,
3 degrees.
2 degrees. 3 degrees of Jim Cornette.
3 degrees. Well, I'm 2 degrees from Bonnie Lee.
All right. Do you still have these photos?
No, I never had the photos.
She had the photos.
Were in the collection of the acquaintance of mine who was degree number 1 in the 3 degrees. When will I see you again? Wasn't that the 3 degrees?
Possibly.